Hey, it's Carl from carcoart.com and sidehustleartist.com. In this video, you'll discover the key principles on how to improve your art quickly. And regardless if you're just starting out or if you've been an artist for quite some time, you'll see significant advancement in your confidence and your creative ability as an artist. Bruce Lee was famously quoted as saying, "I fear not the man who has practiced 1,000 kicks one time. I fear the man who has practiced one kick 1,000 times," which essentially means that focused action is the greatest path to improvement and your confidence and also your strength. Now, regardless of whatever medium that you happen to be working in, it will take consistent applied effort to see improvement in your work. And probably one of the most important things you can do is to stop with any comparisons. So don't focus your time on comparing yourself with other artists. By all means, take advice, helpful tips and inspiration from their experience, but you don't need to compare what you're producing with what other artists are producing. If you get your head stuck in the idea that you need to be like someone else, then you'll quickly be rattled with hesitation, which it leads to procrastination, and you don't end up doing much at all because you're feeling that you're not actually good enough. So those artists that you admire, perhaps look up to, are not more talented than you are. You have to do away with that thinking and those beliefs. Remember, it's about learning one kick 1,000 times. Look at it this way. You have to absorb the theory of art and understand the principles of color composition, which helps to establish the basis of how you actually execute and implement your art. But when it comes down to it, that artist that you so want to replicate, that artist you feel is so much better than you, and for who you may feel was born with this natural talent that you don't possess, well, they cannot compare when it comes down to one very important distinction. And that is that most of your best stuff will come to life because of a feeling or a personal interpretation. And this is the very pointy end of establishing originality in your work. And this is the stuff you produce that cannot be replicated. This is the moment where you have become the artist that the up-and-coming artist actually begins to compare themselves with, which is kind of ironic if you think about it. So that is why you have to appreciate that you are good enough. Granted, still developing, but you are good enough. And you're good enough, so simply move on to the next stage, which would be experimentation. And acclimatize yourself to using different mediums and tools because it will open you up to new possibilities. A good example is when I first started showing my work, I was working with only oils and small canvas. And at the time, I'd not really found much distinction in what I was actually producing. Also, as I was beginning to exhibit almost every week, I simply could not keep up with new work because my oil paintings were detailed and the oils took longer to dry. And I was exhibiting with other more experienced artists who were moving and selling their work quite quickly. So I moved over to acrylics, which dry a lot faster, and I started using much larger canvases to give me space to really see what was possible. And it turned out that I was producing even better work in less than half the time. Also with acrylics, I discovered I had to be more deliberate, as acrylics cannot be manipulated as much as oils can because acrylics dry a lot faster. So you see, the thing is, with my standard structure of using oil paints on smaller canvas, it was familiar territory for me and I didn't have to think about it too much. But in order to advance and develop my art quicker and to keep up with new work, I simply had to get out of my comfort zone. I had to challenge myself, which is key if you want to develop quicker as an artist. Now, when you do begin to move quicker, you can get caught up in the perception of making mistakes. So don't be afraid to actually make mistakes. Don't fear failure, because in terms of being creative, there really isn't anything such as failure. There's only finding a different path. It's only a failure if you never get out of your bed and don't do anything at all. So instead of associating not getting something right as failure, think of it as not having yet established your rhythm. So focus on working on that rhythm, and the best way to do that is to keep working without too much analysis and accept the mistakes, but don't stare and obsess over them. Then practice, accept your mistakes, and once again, don't stare at the canvas and obsess over them. However, don't get caught up in working and grinding yourself away, because you can actually burn out and deflate your enthusiasm. So think logically in that respect, but think critically within reason about your actual work. And what I mean is, don't let it dominate all the thinking space and activity, and work to maintain consistency and to improve, but don't become your own slave driver. If you need further validation that there really is no such thing as failure when you're working creatively, some of my best work has been defined by my ability to make massive mistakes. So my point is, seek to establish rhythm in your work and don't fear mistakes, because you kind of have to make a hot mess in order to discover originality in your work. And one of the biggest killers for me with not developing quicker as an artist was because of disorganization. Organization and preparation is really important in order to improve your art quickly. And I always visualize the concept of a 100-meter sprinter at the Olympics deciding he has to take his shoe off to adjust the discomfort of his sock literally 2 seconds before the starter's gun is fired. And there's no hope for him, he'll never catch up. And I liken that to not being organized and prepared to work in your artist studio, because nothing kills your enthusiasm to get some creative work done more than being disorganized. It may be because you can't find things, you don't have your reference pieces ready, you've not got the right materials ready to go, and then you begin to feel the loss of time, and then you start to feel like that Olympic sprinter. You just start to feel like that you'll never ever catch up. And this begins to have an effect on your overall productivity on the canvas, because now you're flustered and you're exhausted before you even get started. Another principle is, don't fall in love so easily. In other words, avoid getting too attached to your work too soon. And when I first started, I would create a new piece and I'd sit and admire it for the next week. And of course, the value I perceived in it became quite exaggerated as a result, and I simply didn't advance in my own development. It wasn't until I started to produce more work more consistently that I began to look back at the older work that I used to sit and admire and wondered, what in the hell was I thinking? I could see so many issues with it. And the best thing was the gratitude that I had with having taken on a new mindset to simply keep producing new work, because with every new piece I was creating better work and also maintaining my rhythm. And as a result, I don't get too attached to the work that I'm actually producing anymore, which means that I'm actually using my time really well, which is another really good point. Use your time well. Don't get drawn into the social media void. It can steal so much of your time away. And hey, it's understandable that you may want to educate yourself and stay informed, but why not consider doing that while you're developing your craft? So for example, you can listen to podcasts and even a YouTube audio, just like this one, while you work. Also keep a portion of your work in bite-sized pieces. In order to see some improvement quicker, it's worthwhile creating smaller, shorter projects. One kick, 1,000 times. Maybe smaller canvas, or even not canvas and paints. It could be a series of sketches, because it's a lot easier as there's less organization involved and you're free of the intimidation of looking at a 2 meter by 2 meter canvas. I mean, that can be a lot of fun, but it can take a lot longer to see a result and the immediate progress in your work. If I can leave you with one really powerful principle that I use to help keep improving and not getting bogged down in the analytical landmines, and that is to create your story. So for example, I once started the painting of a portrait and I could not get the composition of the face right. The nose was wrong, the eyes were not lining up properly. And I knew that even if I finished this piece, I probably wouldn't showcase it because I would have been too critical of it. But what I discovered as I was working on this piece was a little voice that said, well, if you can't get the eye right and you can't get the nose right, then perhaps the face needs to be disfigured. Maybe it needs a guitar over its face. Maybe it was not meant to be a portrait at all. Maybe it was meant to represent a much stronger message than you're trying to communicate as a portrait. So what had happened is that I allowed a story to grow instead of fighting and resisting and trying to convince myself that I had to stay true to the reference I had created. I simply just let it go. And in some respects, the painting started to help create itself. And sometimes you have to smash through some of the concrete references and ideals that you have locked inside your own head, because by doing so you can really free up your ability to make huge improvements as an artist. And I really hope that makes sense for you. I hope you really got a lot out of this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up below. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down, because that is okay as well. Better still, leave a comment in the comments section below and tell me if you got some value out of this video. And please subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon. That way you'll be notified when I have new content available to view. And thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to connecting with you again real soon and helping you advance your career as an artist. Till next time, your art buddy, Carl.